Who's had the most fun in their Canadian broadcasting career? Well, it may be hard to really know, but there is one thing for sure. There is a guy who I know who travels the world for his TV show. He parties, he dines, he has a few libations in some of the most exotic locations. Oh, and before that, this same guy hung out with the likes of Bob Hope and several other Hollywood and music icons, and even almost got to spend time with Frank Sinatra. Whole other story right there. My next guest is my old buddy Darren Parkman, co-host of The Travel Guys.
Broadcast Chronicles, revealing the most surprising, compelling, and even shocking stories behind some true characters from the other side of the microphone. Here's Bruce Claggett.
Now, he started his career as a radio reporter in British Columbia's Okanagan, but he also quickly developed a taste for meeting and interviewing many Hollywood stars. And then there were his years working beside radio icon Red Robinson on CIL 650's morning show, where he got a chance to chat with and often hang out with some of the biggest names of years gone by. Well, today, Darren Parkman is co-host of the TV series The Travel Guys. And as much as I'd like to say he's had many adventures, he's probably had as much excitement with his misadventures. Parkman, my longtime buddy, great to chat with you. Now let's talk about The Travel Guys, because this is not your typical destination show, is it?
We're not really into the decorum thing when it comes to The Travel Guys. I guess we started the show back in 2003. We had an idea, and we did a pilot in Cancun, Mexico, and the show's never been off the air since then. 21 years.
Cancun, Mexico, I mean, you're not really having a tough time in going to these locations, are you?
It is harder than it looks. I mean, sometimes we're shooting 10, 12 hours a day, myself and co-host Jim Gordon. But, you know, really, how bad can it be? You're hosting a travel show. You're traveling around the world on someone else's dime, which is nice. You don't have to pay for anything. Basically, wherever we go on The Travel Guys, say we're going to Australia, well, that's paid for by Australian tourism. And in return, they get basically a half-hour commercial, you know, promoting their destination, which is going to air for a couple of years and air repeatedly. So, yeah, it's not rocket science to do it. It's a lot of fun. We don't go by scripts. We just kind of ad-lib the entire show. But there is more work to it than you might realize.
But you and co-host Jim have been doing this long before everybody wanted to get into the game of having their own show. I mean, what is this, 20 years?
It's 21 years we've been doing the show, since 2003, and you're right, everybody's got a show now. I mean, they even give podcasts to people that don't deserve them. I'm not going to mention any names, but no, I mean, everybody does have a show. We got into it when it was basically just TV. The show still airs on terrestrial television. We do have a YouTube channel, and our shows are online on our website, which is travelguystv.com, and you can watch episodes there. But yeah, you're right. We got into it back before anybody really was into the whole online YouTube podcast thing. So yeah, we're kind of traditional and old school in that way for sure.
And you've told me you've got an audience around the world, and you've got people interested in watching this around the world, which makes sense because you're traveling the world.
We get emails from people all over the world. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. But in Canada, it is on, as you mentioned, some local TV, Czech TV.
Well, it airs on Czech TV, which I don't know if you know today's TV landscape, but Czech TV is an independent station in Canada, and it's a super station. So you can get Czech TV on pretty much, I get friends in Ontario and friends in Nova Scotia saying they watch Travel Guys all the time because Czech TV is part of pretty much every cable package across the country, or many of the cable packages across the country. So TV's changed a lot. You can see local stations in Manitoba or Saskatchewan here in BC and vice versa. So yeah, you can get it pretty much anywhere in Canada.
When you go to a location, how do you decide where you're going to visit? I mean, you have lots of options, and I take it from watching some of the episodes, booze might be a factor.
You know, we do like to tip the odd drink, and, you know, there's no shame in that. I know you yourself like to have the odd drink. It's a bit of a sidebar here, but I remember two young broadcasting students going to Reno for the first time. I don't know if that rings a bell at all for you. Probably doesn't. You probably blacked out during that, but You and I, back many years ago, went to Reno, and there was some Southern Comfort. I'm going to leave it at that. But
I know how to use the edit function. I can figure out the edit function on this.
Exactly.
That's what post is for. But
That's right, exactly.
you do have a good
None
time.
of this will all be cut out, which is a good thing. But no, yeah, we do like to have the odd drink. But how do we decide what we wanted to do? We went to Tasmania very recently and went through this underground cave, which was unbelievably visual. You go, 80 feet underground to this cave, and it was just like something out of a movie set. So, we talk with the tourism boards. They want to showcase what's great for their destination, and we have our say in it as well. So,
have you ever gone to a place where maybe it's a venue in a place, but it's been an absolute disaster, and you look at Jim and you just say, "Oh my God, this is not making the show."
That's a good question. Where did we go where it was a disaster?
Or the food is terrible, or so,
Well, the food's terrible in a lot of places, if you ask me. I don't want to start naming names and pointing fingers, but I'm a pretty picky eater. So I remember, speaking of bad food, I remember going to China, and we went to this. Here's an example of sort of a disastrous shoot. We went to China, and we were going to a place in Sichuan province to shoot, and next thing you know, they've got the mayor of the city that we go to meeting us, and instead of shooting good content for the travel show, we ended up having to spend like 4 hours with the mayor and the council of the city, sitting in a restaurant. And I'll never forget, we walked into the restaurant, and in front of every place setting was a pack of cigarettes. So that was their way of helping us. They gave everyone a pack of cigarettes. And, sometimes that'll happen. Politics get involved, and, they want to promote their city. But we couldn't speak a word of Chinese. They couldn't speak a word of English. So we sat there with our packs of cigarettes in front of us, and they were passing around, the chicken claws as an appetizer and things that I can't eat. But that kind of thing does happen. But for the most part, wherever we go, it's great. And the other thing that was strange in China is the Chinese government had someone follow us everywhere we shot. So we'd be shooting, we'd look across the street. There'd be two guys in suits and dark glasses standing there with cameras taking pictures of us just to make sure we didn't step out of line. So,
well, they're trying to keep you out of jail.
Pretty much. And, they succeeded just barely. They succeeded. But, for the most part, the Chinese shoot was great. But, things are different wherever you go. So you got to expect to run into stuff like that.
Well, conversely, there must be places that you absolutely love that you've gone to and you thought, oh, my God, how did I not know about this? What are some of the top ones?
You know what? A good question, because one of my favorite places in the world is Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a beautiful city with the Petronas Twin Towers. You've got Borneo there in Malaysia, just on the other side of the Twin Towers. And just a beautiful, beautiful city. Very clean, very well run, just a gorgeous place to shoot. I was shocked and pleasantly surprised by Kuala Lumpur. But if I had to pick a favorite, it's still Sydney, Australia. I love Sydney, Australia.
Oh, Sydney.
It's a
like
drinking
what
culture
everybody
there.
says.
Everybody gets
Really?
off work at Everyone gets off work at 5 p.m. in Sydney and goes directly to the pub, which that's my kind of thing. So it's really just such a it's basically, if you like London, and I know you like London,
Yeah.
I love London. It's a tropical London, It's London, but
God.
there's parrots flying over your head everywhere. So. And the strangest animals you've ever seen in Sydney, Australia. I've pet wombats, and I've seen a platypus in the wild. I've seen kangaroos running in the Hunter Valley. So it's just such a great, strange land. And if you haven't been anywhere exotic that you'd really like to go, I can't recommend Sydney, Australia more.
But I know
it's the coolest
you've
place.
also talked to me about this. You don't have to go far to have a good time. And in fact, you've mentioned that one of your favorite places is Palm Springs.
Palm Springs is a great, great town. We did a lot of Travel Guys episodes in Palm Springs for the Palm Springs International Film Festival, where we had the pleasure of meeting celebrities and interviewing celebrities like Clint Eastwood, Leonardo DiCaprio, you name it. But as the city itself, it's just so old school, mid-century modern. It's basically what Hollywood would have been like back in the 1950s.
Yeah. Wow. And that's right up your alley.
What do you think of Palm Springs? You've been there.
Yeah, I like it for the 50s kind of culture and the colors. It's got a color palette.
It really does. That whole mid-century modern look. You walk into a bar and there's like a maitre d' standing at the door to welcome you, and it's just like stepping back in time. But just a really cool city to hang out in. And my favorite place there, the Village Pub on Palm Canyon Drive with its fire tables, that's the first place I go when I get there.
Yeah, you've had a chance to go to some cool places, and some of them are a little bit kind of iffy. Anything ever scare you?
We've done some pretty cool stuff. I mean, I try to be the adventurous guy on the show. One thing that stands out just off the top of my head is there's a big sport in New Zealand called zorbing. You ever heard of zorbing?
No.
What happens is they take a giant plastic ball. It's like a ski resort. They have a giant plastic ball, and they fill it with liquid, and then you get inside the ball with the liquid. You go up to the top of a ski hill, and then they roll you down the hill inside this ball, and then the ball goes on a conveyor belt, goes back up to the top of the ski hill. So,
well, nothing could go wrong there.
I'll tell you what, it was pretty scary. You get thrown around a lot inside this ball, and then when it's over, they basically open a tiny little hatch, and you come out of the ball with all this slimy liquid. It's like being born, basically. You know, you come out of this little hatch at the end of it's hard to describe, but look up zorbing on the internet and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I will. Hey, your co-host, you mentioned Jim Gordon. He's a pretty straight-laced guy from what I know. Do you ever you travel with him, do you ever get into kind of arguments? I mean, you yourself can be a bit of a prick.
That last comment hurt a little bit. Let me just take the lawn dart out of my chest so I can answer that question. That hurt, but, you know, you're probably right. I can be a bit of a prick, but Jim's kind of a straight-laced guy. I do the adventurous stuff on the show. Like, if there's any sort of thing like, parasailing or, underwater stuff, I tend to do all that stuff because I like the adventurous part of it. Jim's more into the cerebral part of travel. He likes he likes to do the wine tastings. He likes to do the food stuff, but I'll convince him to do some of that stuff sometimes. We did a thing recently where you basically put on a scuba tank and a space helmet, and you walk on the bottom of the ocean floor up till like 30, 40 feet of water. We did this recently, and it was in the Caribbean, and Jim did not want to do it, but boy, did that ever come out good footage-wise. And after he did it, he was happy he did it. But yeah, as for the most part, we definitely are not daredevils. I like to do stuff that's on the risky side, but yeah, it works out well in the end because we both like different things.
Have you added up how many places you've been to now? Do you have any rough idea?
You know what? We were trying to do that. Jim and I just got back from a Mexican trip. We just went and did a show on the state of Nayarit in Mexico. And while we were on one of our 3-hour van rides, trying to get to another location, we were trying to add up how many. But I think our best guess over 21 years is we've done something in the order of, I want to say 350 episodes, if you can believe it. So there's been a lot of destinations and a lot of places around the world that we've been. I mean, in Europe, I can't think of many countries we haven't visited. Mm-hmm. We've not been to Russia. We haven't been to a lot of places I'd still like to go. But, I mean, we've been to pretty much everywhere else, and it's been a ton of fun. We've done a lot of cruises on the show, too. We just got back from
I love
New
cruises.
Zealand, Australian
cruises
cruise.
are great.
They are. The food is free, and the booze is plentiful. What more do you need, right? No, cruises are great, and they're the kind of thing that I would do after the show ends just because I've really gotten a taste for the sea life, and you know, even when the seas are rough, it doesn't bother me anymore. And I think we've done 13 or 14 cruises on the Travel Guys in the past 21 years.
I think people would be right listening to this and saying, wow, what a dream job. But you got into this when you got out of legacy radio.
Pretty much, yeah. It was one of those situations, and I'm sure you can relate to this, is I couldn't afford to work in radio anymore, and radio, I will say this about radio. Radio is probably the funnest gig you can ever have in media, and for one reason, the live factor. I mean, if you're doing a morning show in radio or you're hosting a talk show, which you've done, I mean, it's just fun because anything can go wrong, and I tend to work best personally when it's live. And the thing that I never could wrap my head around about doing the travel show is we shoot this show as though it were live while we're shooting it, but it takes 2.5 months to edit and get on the air. You know, you see the show 2.5 months after you've been at the destination, basically. But I miss the live factor of radio, just the immediacy of it. I like the fly by the seat of your pants aspect, and I work better when I'm under pressure, and I miss the live thing. But radio, you got to pay a fun tax if you work in radio, and the fun tax is you make no money.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. And you and I went to broadcasting school back in 1987, BCIT. That's how we know each other. We've known each other, 25, 30 years. But here's a trivia question. What was the call letters of my first radio station? And I'm going to guess the first call letters of your first radio station we worked at, because I think you and I both left BCIT in the second year, did we not? And we got a job and finished got our degree in broadcasting, or our diploma rather, while we were away working in the business.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to guess that you're not talking about CFML, which is a campus radio station that trains the broadcasters.
No, you know what? I got tired of working at that campus radio station. You were basically talking, they broadcast as far as the parking lot at BCIT. Basically.
Yeah, good audience.
Yeah, that's right. But no. Where did I first go out of BCIT?
You went to Penticton? You went to Prince
That's right,
George?
Penticton.
Penticton, there you go.
What were the call letters?
CKOR? No, CIGV?
CIGV, you got it. Wow, that's incredible. Great Valleys Radio. The GV stood for Great Valleys. It was a country radio station. And around the same time, you were in Quesnell, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
What?
CKCQ Radio. Caribou Radio.
CKCQ, right. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So back then, what were we making? $1,100 a month each, or $1,000 a month?
Oh, I don't even think it was $1,100. In fact, I know what I was making. It was $10.40 a month and a $25 car fee.
Wow, they were cheating you, man. I was making $1,100 a month.
Oh, you're in the big time.
I got to drive the Great Valleys CIGV cruiser around Penticton for a summer. So
that's almost cracking $20,000 a year.
You know what, though? How fun was that when you look back on it? At the time, it was a struggle. You look back, it was a blast.
Oh, it was absolutely a blast. But I must say, the thing that I'm jealous that you've had in your career is the ability to meet lots of famous people. You did the morning show on CIL 650 with Red Robinson, and that was a venue for so many big names.
It really was. You know what, Red?
So tell me the Frank Sinatra story.
Oh, the Frank Sinatra story. Well, I actually had dinner with, just to backtrack a little, Red and I both loved celebrities, old-time celebrities. So my job on the morning show was to set up the interviews, and we would have on one morning Bob Hope, then we'd have Maury Amsterdam from the Dick Van Dyke Show on, then we'd have June Lockhart on, who played the mother on Lost in Space, and every week we'd have 2 or 3 celebrity interviews. I remember we had Jerry Mathers in studio, the Beaver. And when we had we had his mother, Barbara Billingsley, who played June Cleaver, call up while he was in studio with us. But we had a ton of fun that way. But to answer your question, out of all the celebrities I've interviewed, and I did a lot at CIL, I did a lot at KISS FM before that for a show called Today in Vancouver. But the one holy grail was always Frank Sinatra. He was untouchable with the media. He did not do interviews, and I was such a Sinatra fan. I just love Frank Sinatra. Another fellow radio announcer who I know you know well, Joe Leary, also a big fan. So we kind of made it our life's mission. We got to somehow meet Sinatra, get the cheesy photo op with him, and try and do an interview. So basically, I was sitting at the Bayside. I don't want to make this story overly long, but I was at the Bayside Room in downtown Vancouver. Started talking to the guy next to me at the bar. This guy is a former manager, like he ran basically the Desert Inn Hotel in Las Vegas. I told him how much of a Sinatra fan I was, what I did for a living. He said, listen, I'm going to get you front row seats for Frank Sinatra at the Desert Inn, and I'll see what I can do. The owner of the hotel is named Eric Fisher, and I'm going to talk to him, and I'm going to see what I can do to get you a meeting with Sinatra. So I was like a kid, a schoolgirl with the Beatles here on this thing. It was just, it was unbelievable. So cut to Joe Leary and I going to Frank Sinatra's show at the Desert Inn. We get free front row seats, and here's the bad part. They also gave us free alcohol. So we're front row for Sinatra, and we're just beside ourselves. Frank's doing an unbelievably good show. At one point, Joe Leary stood up and said, hey, Frank, do one for my baby. And Frank goes, no, I'm not going to do that song. And Joe goes, come on, do one for my baby. Do that song. So I'm not doing that. So he's arguing with Frank Sinatra from the audience, basically trying to get Frank to do this song. But anyway, we decide we're going to go backstage. So we go backstage. We get backstage, and we see Brad Garrett from the show Everybody Loves Raymond. He's the opening comedian.
All 6'8" of them.
Yeah. So he's the opening comedian for Sinatra. So we say, hey, can you introduce us to Frank? He goes, no, I can't do that. So cut to a long story. Earlier in the day, we'd gone up to see Eric Fisher, the owner of the hotel. He says, listen, he said, I have gamblers that spend $5 million a year here at the casino, and they don't get a chance to meet Sinatra. He goes, all I can tell you is I'm going to make you reservations at the Ho Wan Chinese restaurant. which is attached to the Desert Inn Hotel. He goes, Sinatra likes to go there. I'm going to make you reservations for that. So he got us reservations for this restaurant. So the show's over. We go to the restaurant. They say, we're closed. And we say, well, can we get in? Eric Fisher, the owner. And he goes, oh, if Eric Fisher said it, we're open. So we got in there. So cut to us sitting in this restaurant, just me and Joe Leary by ourselves. It's completely closed. All of a sudden, the back door of the restaurant opens. Sinatra and his entourage walk in. They sit one table away from us. So Joe and I, being ambitious the way we are, we say, let's get a photo with Sinatra. Let's not bother him during dinner, but we'll walk up when he's finished dinner and say, Mr. Sinatra, we're big fans. Would you mind? Can we get a photo with you? We love your show, blah, 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 blah. So we wait till dinner's over. Sinatra gets up. I walk over to Sinatra's table. I get within 8 feet of it, and the security guards and the henchmen came out of the walls. Next thing I know, I'm being carried out by my elbows out of the Ho-Wan Chinese restaurant. And I look in my peripheral vision, I see Joe Leary being carried out by his elbows. And all of a sudden, there's a little guy called Elliot Weissman, who is Sinatra's manager, short little guy.
Yeah.
And he's got his finger in my chin, and he's pressing into my chin. And his exact words were, don't even effing think about it. And I said, I won't, sir, I'm leaving. And he said, you're effing right, you're leaving. Long story short, I get back to Vancouver. The guy who got me the tickets for Sinatra called me up. He goes, what happened? And I said, well, we tried to meet Frank. It didn't work out. And he said, well, you're banned for life from the Desert Inn Casino. Eric Fisher called me. So that was my dinner with Frank Sinatra. That was my dinner with Sinatra.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. You know, if he can't keep you out of jail, we'll get you bounced out and your legs broken in Vegas.
Pretty much, it's a great story now, but at the time we were heartbroken because we came so close. And Frank never even saw us. I mean, it wasn't him that directed us to be kicked out, but these guys just came from, I was within 10 steps of Sinatra, and, he was standing up, and then these guys just came from out of the walls.
Have you ever met somebody that they say never meet your heroes, but have you ever met somebody that you thought was going to be a great interview and you thought, oh my God, this is just the worst?
It's funny you should say that. Usually the bigger the star that I've interviewed, the nicer the person. Bob Hope was the nicest guy in the world. I was up in his hotel suite, and he goes, hey, do you ever try those Pop-Tarts? You want a Pop-Tart? So Bob Hope made me a Pop-Tart in his hotel suite. I ate that with him. But the one guy who I'd say was disappointing, that really disappointed me, and I didn't have a long interaction with him. I was on a red carpet in Palm Springs at the Palm Springs Film Festival, and Canadian actor Donald Sutherland was there promoting a movie.
Oh, yeah.
And as he was walking by to attract his attention, to get him to come over to I said, Mr. Sutherland, we're from Canada. Can we ask you a couple questions? And he looked at me and said, I don't care if you're from Canada. Why would I care if you're from Canada? And I said, listen, we'd just like to ask you a couple questions about your movie you're promoting. He goes, why would I give a shit that you're from Canada? And basically sneered at me and walked away. So that was a little disappointing. Maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. But that was, and yet I'd interviewed his son a couple of years earlier, Kiefer, who was the nicest guy.
Yeah, from everything I've heard,
I guess
Kiefer's
we caught
great.
Donald on a bad day. I don't know what happened there, but
I guess you did.
Yeah.
Darren Parkman, a pleasure as always. I mean, what's next? What's in store for you in the future, going forward in Darren Parkman land?
You know what? We're 21 years into the travel, guys. So I hope to be on a lot more podcasts like your own.
Of course, we'll have a part 2 at some point.
Absolutely. But no, you know what? We're still going strong with the travel guys. We got a couple trips coming up in the future. We just got back literally 4 days ago from Mexico. And I want you to come on some of those trips. I've invited you along, so come along, sir. We'll
I
put
hope
you
to.
in the show. And so basically for me, it's the travel guys. Radio I still love, but radio is a shell of what it was. I mean, let's be honest about it. But this radio's still great. I listen to it in my car all the time. I have Sirius radio. I love that. But to get a job and work in radio is not an easy thing anymore, as you know. So,
well, thank you very much.
I got one piece of advice for you, and this is coming from 27 years ago in a hotel room in Reno, Nevada, when I saw you having a few drinks. For all I can tell you at this point is, if you do one thing in life, stay away from Southern Comfort.
Darren Parkman, everybody, don't forget to try the buffet and tip your server. As for his next adventures, well, I do, in fact, hope to join him, because after all, that's how stories become legends.
Broadcast Chronicles is written and hosted by Bruce Claggett. Music, follow your heart via Upbeat. Graphic design, Creative Shovel. I'm Sarah McKenzie. Subscribe to Broadcast Chronicles wherever you download your favorite podcasts. This has been a BFC Communications production.